living love through the practice of presence. Today I want to talk about absence, actually, as a form of presence. Because this time of year can be hard for those of us who've lost loved ones. We can feel their absence more keenly, like a presence. Just because someone passed away does not mean that our love died with them. Grief, which is really about love more than death, means learning how to be in relationship with our beloveds who are no longer physically present. This is why, while grief evolves, it never truly ends. And it is not just that we've lost the physical presence of someone we love. Grief shifts the dynamics in the circle of relationships to which our beloved belonged with us. Not just with other people, but with traditions, identities, and just the day-to-day being in the world together that we took for granted. And that's why for some, the holidays can feel like a heavy season. The loss of a loved one is the experience we most often associate with the word grief. But as psychotherapist Frances Weller notes, there are several other ways grief manifests itself in our lives, often unconsciously. We can grieve the loss of hopes and dreams. We can grieve love we lost or did not receive, parts of ourselves or our lives that we thought would come into being that never did or were cut off, maybe because of a ruptured relationship, maybe an illness or an accident. Maybe we had a passion we wanted to follow, but we never did or could, and then it becomes too late and that door closes. We can carry grief of our ancestors. Their suffering and trauma lives in our bones. And we carry the grief of the earth, the interdependent web of existence, of which we are all a part. The violence of war, the ravages of climate change, the loss of species and ecosystems. Our bodies and souls are touched by these absences. And I've come to believe that the free-floating anxiety and anger and violence in our world are related to grief and the human tendency toward a refusal to acknowledge any of it. I wonder if we were to take the time to speak honestly about the griefs and traumas of history, or about how the world is changing and what people have lost. Because change, even if it is good, always comes with loss. Maybe we could move more compassionately and intentionally through it all. All this to set the stage to share a grief that I'm dealing with. An experience of divine absence. I'm a theist. I trust in divine presence. I know that many Unitarian Universalists, most perhaps, are atheist or agnostic. Although I see that the number of theists in our faith has been growing in recent years. In a sermon I gave some years ago about my faith, I invited all of my beloved atheists then, and I do so now, to think of my God talk as a kind of National Geographic special. I'm inviting you to be curious about a culture or landscape that might be alien to you, but maybe you'll gain an insight or something. In other words, I'm not telling you to believe what I believe. Rather, I invite you to translate what I'm talking about into your own spiritual experience and language. And I'm simply asking you to listen, to be part of a spiritual conversation I've been having with myself, and I could use some help. So this is what we mean when we use, say, we need not think alike to love alike. We don't have to believe in God. At the same time, we don't have to not believe in God, if that makes sense. And I know that the word God is a tender one for many, especially those of us who came to Unitarian Universalism from a tradition where God was defined for you, where you were told you had to believe in a God that you did not experience as true, that you did not trust. I grew up in a Unitarian Universalist congregation, so my experience of the word God was invitational, and it was broad rather than narrow and doctrinal. I've never understood God to mean an all-powerful male entity sitting in judgment who chooses one set of believers over another. Furthermore, I don't actually believe in God in the sense that I don't have an intellectual commitment to a divine being. I'm a universalist in that I trust that there is a larger spirit of love in the world who loves all souls unconditionally, and that this love is the ultimate sacred force or presence in the universe. God for me is all the love that has ever been and is and will be, woven into a tapestry of kind that holds the whole creation. And I do feel this spirit of love I call God as a presence larger than me. The larger presence that called me to ministry, a path I never imagined I would follow. A presence that I felt when I first walked in this sanctuary as your ministerial pre-candidate. A presence which told me, yes, this is where I'm called to serve. I feel this presence often here in the sanctuary and among this congregation when I witness how all you embody love, in care for one another, in care for this place, in care for the world. And I have felt this presence also in times when I have struggled, most notably during the postpartum depression I experienced after the birth of my first child. I was in despair to the point that I could not feel the love of the people who loved me most. I felt unworthy of it. But I felt God's unconditional love refused to let me go, and it helped me get back. This larger spirit of love is important to me also because I recognize I cannot love everyone unconditionally, nor can I love the world unconditionally either. As a human being, my capacity is limited. I also recognize that it is unfair and even dangerous to ask people who have suffered abuse or assault, who've been oppressed and marginalized, to love those who've harmed them, to forgive them. It's another reason why God is a helpful presence to me. I can turn that work over to God when I cannot do it or should not have to. For me, this is the heart of what it means to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person, to recognize that even if it is beyond me individually, even if I need to draw necessary boundaries to protect my body, my heart, my spirit, I can ask a larger spirit of love embodied by this congregation and our larger UU gathering of congregations to hold all souls with the compassion or forgiveness or generosity that I can't. As I've said before, I was not surprised by the results of the election, disappointed, angry, sad, but not surprised. I was surprised, though, at the sudden ache I felt of God's absence. So strongly as to feel like a presence. Like Jan Richardson, I sensed so deeply the absurdity of the brokenness of the world, and it felt like God's inability or unwillingness to step in at a time when it felt so urgent that love do so. I felt the grief of being abandoned. I questioned whether the heart of my faith, that love is the ultimate sacred force in the universe, is realistic or even real. Whether it was worthy of my deepest commitment and trust. I question whether God, this larger spirit of love, was present in the world at all. But as I thought about it, I realized I didn't want God to be love so much as I wanted God to be fairness. I wanted God to fix things, according to my definition of fairness. This is the spiritual struggle at the heart of what is called theodicy. The questions about why bad things happen to good people, why evil exists in the world, why life isn't fair. And this struggle is ancient. Psalm 22, the one Jesus cried out from the cross, abandoned as he was in those terrible hours, is just one of over 50 laments in the book of Psalms. And we don't have to believe in God to struggle with these questions, for they are about human nature as much as they are about divine nature. How do we make meaning, make sense of a world when bad things happen, when things are not fair, when love does not win the day? I wish I had a simple answer. This is when I am a little jealous of fundamentalists, religious and non-religious, who can reduce everything down to the certainty of their beliefs, who don't struggle with doubt. No need to struggle with grief or with absence, with human limitations and failures, or even our capacity for evil and cruelty. But as I have struggled with this sense of God's absence, as I strive to find my way back to sensing God's presence again, sensing that larger spirit of love at work in the world, I realize that that practice starts with presence, myself. I need to practice being present to the immediate moments I have with the people and the communities I love. I need to be present with this time of year when, yes, it is cold and dark, but also when the moon and stars are clearer in the night sky. And as Joan Coyne wrote in the Advent retreat, when I can see better the depth of the universe and stand in awe of it. I realize I can grieve and I should grieve about what is being lost right now in our country and in our world. At the same time, I need to be present to this grief because it is about love. And thus it is worthy of my commitment. Maybe this is how God, how the larger spirit of love feels about all of us right now. That we have been given this time with one another on this planet, and we are choosing to use it against one another and against the earth. And if it breaks my heart, then I imagine it breaks God's heart too. And yet it is only by grieving our way through that we will be able to reestablish our relationships with whom and what we love, even in the face of absence. And it's only then that we can be open to the unexpected ways that love reemerges, makes its presence felt again. It's a tender and vulnerable way to live, I know. But as Neil said in his Advent reflection, that is where hope lives. Not in certainty, but in the possibility of what love is doing in the world that I have yet to imagine. Maybe I can't see it or feel it right now, but I can make room for it.